So saving the very best for last, in my personal opinion, Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. Good Lord.
Can I be contrary for a second?
Oh.
Worst movie of the year. No, no way. Nobody could possibly have that opinion.
So this was what I was kind of talking about when I was talking about, I think if you didn't have the big giant Marvel machine, that this is kind of what something they could have done with Black Panther, is something along, obviously can't do the same story, but like being able to flex your creative muscle when creating a film like they did with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's really not like any other superhero comic book movie that I've seen. I would say that it's probably easily in the top 5 all-time comic book movies that I've seen. I would put it up there easily with like Logan and any other comic book movies that transcend the genre of comic book movie. Because even ones that I do enjoy, like Infinity War, like that's a good comic book movie. But I feel like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, it transcends.
It's just a good movie.
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to go out on a limb here in what is slowly becoming the popular opinion. Best Spider-Man movie.
I mean, just by the transitive properties of being in the top 5, I would say probably. Homecoming comes really close. For me, like I'm not a big Sam Raimi person. Like his filmmaking style doesn't appeal to me at all. So I think there's a big gap between Homecoming and the rest of the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say like Spider-Verse and then Homecoming for me are like the top 2. I know everybody talks about how Spider-Man 2 is like the best superhero movie ever made. I do not agree with that opinion. Feel free to at me.
Yeah, I would. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I feel like there's just enough of that weird Sam Raimi stuff that he does with his movies that it just kind of like bumps it out for me personally. But yeah, I just rewatched it this weekend for a second time, and I don't know if there's any part of this that I would have a negative critique of. I mean, all the performances just hit it out of the park, with 2 comedic performances in particular that I think are some of the best written and performed characters in a superhero movie. For me, John Mulaney and Nicolas Cage, they just absolutely nailed the timing and the humor.
Yeah. At a time when it is so easy to just hate Nicolas Cage because he is just a complete shadow and joke of whatever he was back in the like late 80s, early 90s kind of era of his career. Like, holy shit, does he redeem himself with this?
Yeah. And I think as an introduction onto the big screen, I don't think John Mulaney could have done a better job of selling this completely ridiculous character in a world that he shouldn't fit in, but he's able to sell it in a way that you don't even think twice about him being there. And
yeah,
probably the best introduction of any character in a movie, like when he just walks on the screen with his big giant wet hand. So yeah, for me, like the music is really good, and like all the different themes that they do as far as the score and like the pop music that they add into it, I think both work very well in being a very specific genre and time and place, but without dating it particularly poorly, like you'll see a lot.
Yeah, this movie has such an interesting thing for me. So like, I don't remember whose video. I was watching a video about Spider-Man movies, and they were talking specifically about the soundtrack. I want to say, I think it was Cosmonaut Variety Hour. But he was talking about like, he's not like a big Post Malone guy. And so having like Post Malone show up and it kind of took him out of it a little bit. I did not have that personally. And this dark contrast between, I think he brought it up in his video of like, what does White Spider-Man's soundtrack look like? It looks like fucking Nickelback.
Wasn't it Train featuring Chad Kroeger?
So in the first movie, it was Chad Kroeger and some other dude did a song together. For Spider-Man 2, we got Train.
Okay. Doing a genre
I don't
of music.
remember there being a big tie-in song
for
the third movie, though. I feel like by the third movie, they were just like, you know what? Let's just not do a soundtrack. Let's just not. We've completely sank the boat the first two times. Maybe we just don't do that anymore.
Well, I think,
and so
I think with the success of Batman Begins, but not having a big hit pop song, like they realized they don't have to spend that money to sell their superhero movie.
Yeah.
And so like, because I feel like it was around that time that you stopped seeing like big expensive music videos by shitty bands.
As a tie-in.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to think of any after that did. Because like even X-Men 3 didn't really have one, I don't think.
The soundtrack to this movie, I feel like is something that a lot of people don't talk about, specifically with the score. Because as the soundtrack, like this soundtrack is probably like my number one in context release music-wise of this year, but it's something that I will never listen to outside of this movie.
Yeah.
I don't really, I'm not a big like rap scene guy, but in the context of this movie, it is so effective and it works so well. But as far as score goes, the most effective piece for me within the movie was the Prowler's theme. Because holy shit, every time that comes on, did every hair on my body stand on end.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, so I don't want to spoil it here because I don't know how to say it without spoiling anything. But there's a similar theme between that one and Spider-Man's. There's like a very similar kind of like, not necessarily inverted, but like they like flip it on its head. And then so like after a scene when they played the Spider-Man like theme again, I was like, oh wow, there's like you can like find similar pieces.
I think what really was effective about it to me was how it kind of harkened back to the Joker's theme from The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Where it was that very elongated electric guitar like notes that just sat and built, and just like there's so much pressure behind it and so much like just intensity in it that it is, you feel the danger of it, and it is such an effective thing that like not a lot of movies will do for a character, and without again like trying to spoil anything, but giving that character the most effective theme of all the villains to me was such a good move.
I also really like the framing device of how each character introduces themselves. Those are all really fun. I also like the way that Jake Johnson's Peter Parker, like he's narrating what he's saying, but you're actually seeing what's actually happening. There's a lot of good jokes in there. And then I think at this point, I don't think there can be any more argument about which Chris is the best Chris, because I don't think you're going to beat Spider Bells at any point. I mean, that's like the fact
that's fair.
Just that he was able to do that, or that he was, would agree to do that, I think speaks volumes about like what the choices that he makes. like in his career.
Yeah. That was one I had to look up who that was. Like, we got out of the theater and there was a couple just like, oh shit, I forgot to look at the credits to see who that was, because like I couldn't tell. And so like figuring out who he was and who at the very end of the movie, the stinger, who that was.
Oh yeah. Also, that's probably the best stinger that I've ever seen.
Oh my god, it's so good.
I think this is probably the best Aunt May that they've had on screen. I like that she's kind of more of a badass than any of the Spider-Men.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with Lily Tomlin either.
Yeah. I think the Catherine Hahn character is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is something that I'm so glad that they kept hidden in all of the promotional materials.
Yeah. They did a lot. They did a good job with not like giving away. Like they used a lot of like visual stuff, but they didn't like lay out all of the story beats from beginning to end, because like literally what the movie is about, I had no idea going into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was really good marketing on their part, which is really bizarre to me that this is the same company that released Venom like 2 months earlier. It just boggles the mind.
Yeah. So what this tells me is that there was two different versions of Sony, and this very much shows that Venom is what Sony thinks everyone wants, and Into the Spider-Verse is what happens when Sony just gives creative control to the team of people actually working on the movie.
Yeah.
And now my big fear is that Sony is going to swoop in and just like try to take credit for everything, and then the sequel is literally going to be just them capitalizing on what they think people wanted.
Part of the problem is that one of those two movies made $1 billion, and it wasn't the one that should have, because Venom's made like $900 million, and I don't know if anyone's gone to see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Like, I've not heard anything about that making money at all.
Yeah. I think it's doing okay, but it needs to be doing way better than, even if it's doing extremely well, it needs to do better.
Yeah. Which is what, to me, I would rather get, whether it's Sony or Fox with the X-Men franchise, I would rather get like 4 not great movies and 1 really great movie that kind of elevates the genre, rather than like 10 movies that are just fine.
Yeah. So worldwide right now, it is sitting at 302 million.
So the one complaint that I did have is that I do wish Penny Parker had been given more to do, because I feel like she kind of got the shaft as far as not having a big character moment like everybody else did.
Yeah. Considering out of all of the characters, she was the one that I forgot to mention in my tangent that I just had.
Yeah.
So not a super effective character, unfortunately.